So this is going to be another movie review. This one's called The Chase, 1946. Giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I love this flick. It's about what I expected. Another great film noir with a plot twist. Robert Cummings is in it. He was in Saboteur and Dial M for Murder. Perfect role for him as the traumatized World War II veteran who becomes a gangster's chauffeur. It's also got Peter Lorre as the gangster's sidekick. Peter Lorre. He's always got a cigarette in his mouth. I sent the link to the Cult Cinema Classics black and white version. There's a colorized version as well from Cult Cinema Classics, but I sent the black and white version link to my former coworker, Symphony Chu, because I loved it so much. Great movie poster too. It looks like the Vertigo poster with a staircase with the Blondie and Robert Cummings. Michelle Morgan. I don't know what movies she's been in. But Michelle Morgan plays the gangster's husband, Lorna. And she's very pretty. Anyways, my former coworker might not like this movie because the gangster Eddie likes to slap around women. And he's Steve Cochran plays Eddie. I don't know who that is either. I didn't even recognize Robert Cummings because I haven't seen Saboteur in like 15 years. And it was probably my former coworker, Symphony Chu, who let me borrow Saboteur. She has it in her DVD collection, I think. If she's still alive. That's a good question. I sure could use a girlfriend right now, or an abandoned San Francisco building to live in. These people, the Chinese guy Edwin Chang, one of the owner's husband, he's more empathetic to me, my situation. He said, well, we're going to respect your tenant rights, and we're going to try to help you with your living situation. So this guy's, I feel more comfortable talking to this guy. He's the other people are upstairs are just crazy and whack. The other owner and her boyfriend, I can hear them yelling right now, and it's just constant all day long. They get up in the middle of the night and they start yelling. It's like a psychological disorder. Anyways, The Chase is a 1946 U.S. film noir directed by Arthur Ripley. The screenplay is by Philip Jordan, is based on Cornell Woolrich's 1944 novel, The Black Path of Fear. Stars Robert Cummings as Chuck Scott. Robert Cummings was in The Devil and Miss Jones, Princess O'Rourke, two of Alfred Hitchcock's thrillers. Saboteur and Dial M for Murder. I think I have Dial M for Murder in my Netflix queue somewhere. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Let me look up Dial M for Murder. Cummings plays Chuck Scott, a veteran who suffers from hallucinations. Dial M for Murder. Yeah, I do have it in my Netflix queue. And Netflix is predicting that I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's got Ray Milland and Grace Kelly. It looks pretty decent. Robert Cummings plays a writer. When Chuck Scott, Robert Cummings, returns a lost wallet to violent mobster Eddie Roman, Steve Cochran, Eddie offers to hire him as a chauffeur. He starts asking him these questions like he's in a job interview. And I guess he likes the answers. But unfortunately, Robert Cummings has a pretty face. And consequently, the blondie wife falls in love with her. Especially the way Eddie treats his wife. Like locking her up in her room and not allowing her to travel to Cuba. Chuck becomes mixed up in a plot to help Eddie's wife, Lorna, Michelle Morgan, run to Havana to escape her cruel husband. Pretty cool story. Chuck Scott is a World War II veteran who is now a penniless drifter in Miami, tormented by bizarre dreams. After finding a wallet and returning it to Eddie Roman, a vicious gangster. He is hired by Roman to be his driver. Roman tests his new driver, whom he nicknames Scotty, by assuming control of his car from the back seat. He's got a brake and a pedal in the back seat. It's like a Batmobile. Scotty does not know that Roman has an accelerator in the rear passenger compartment. The accelerator is on the right side and the brake is on the left side. And then you've got the speedometer in the middle. It goes up to 110, which is pretty decent for a 1946 car. The bizarre trick unnerves Scotty and Roman's right-hand man, Gino, played by the great Peter Lorre. Love Peter Lorre in this flick. Roman reveals himself as a tough gangster by killing any competition and even locks his wife Lorna in her room every night to control her. Lorna goes for a drive every night, and one day she asks Scotty to take her to Havana, Cuba. In exchange for $1,000, he consents, and he realizes that he is in love with her. When they reach Havana, they stop for a drink at the club where Lorna is stabbed to death while in Scotty's arms. All the evidence, including the fact that Scotty had already purchased the knife earlier that day, points to Scotty as the killer, and he realizes that he's been framed. Peter Lorre pays off the knife dealer to lie to the cops, and she ends up getting killed as well. A photograph from the club that proves Scotty's innocence is destroyed by Gino, who has come to Cuba to exact revenge against Lorna and Scotty. Scotty escapes police custody, but Scotty is supposedly gunned down by Gino when he runs to the curio store from which the knife was purchased. Scotty's face is never shown during this scene. Scotty wakes in Miami on the night that he and Lorna are supposed to abscond to Havana. It was all a bad dream. It's like the story is repeating itself, but in a different direction. He's sweating profusely and immediately takes his pills, presumably prescribed to treat his post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, from battle in World War II. Warfare. What is it good for? Nothing. Scotty remembers nothing, and he visits the Naval Hospital to seek treatment from his doctor, Commander Davidson. Davidson urges him to try to remember why he was dressed as a driver, but Scotty is unable to do so. The two go drinking at the Florida club, and all of a sudden he remembers Lorna. Lorna is shocked that Scotty abruptly quit his job and departed earlier that night, and she is locked in her room after Roman slaps her, discovers her writing a letter to Scotty. He slapped one of the lady, like, housemaids at the beginning of the film. So it's not the first time. Roman and Gino go to the Florida Club to cool down, unknowingly sitting across the club and behind a partition from Scotty. Davidson realizes that the woman who Scotty loves is Roman's wife, but by this time, Scotty remembers where he was supposed to be, and he leaves to find Lorna. He discovers some Havana tickets in his work uniform. His chauffeur uniform. He discovered some Havana tickets. He rescues her, and they head for the port, but Gino and Roman are also heading for the port after they discover that Scotty was seen at the port buying tickets earlier this morning. When Roman, using his master accelerator Batmobile to push the car's speed to 100 miles per hour while Peter Lorre is driving, the car crashes into an oncoming train, killing both gangsters. Live fast, die young. That's the motto of the gangster in 1946, The Chase. But Peter Lorre doesn't look too young. He looks like he's in his 40s or maybe even 50s. The Black Path of Fear was published in 1944. The New York Times praised its fiendishly ingenious plot and thrilling episodes. I think they did a good job of doing the movie. Producer Seymour Nebenzahl bought the rights to the story. In January 1946, he announced Phil Jordan, with whom he made Whistle Stop, was writing the script. Adjustments were required for the story to comply with the production code. Much of the action was framed as a dream sequence so that the characters could escape the consequences of their actions. The character of Scotty was originally to re-enlist in the army at the end, but veterans thought this was a bad idea. So the time of Roman's death was advanced so that Lorre would wind up with Scotty. The cause of death in the book was changed from an attack by a mad dog to an auto accident. Adjustments to scenes set in Cuba were required to avoid upsetting the Cuban government. In March 1946, Robert Cummings signed on to play the lead role, and Joan Leslie was borrowed from Warner Brothers to co-star. She was in High Sierra, Sergeant York, and Yankee Doodle Dandy. I've only seen Sergeant York, Joan Leslie. Arthur Ripley signed on to direct. Warner Brothers then insisted Leslie was still under contract to them, causing principal photography to be delayed by a month over the dispute. Nebenzahl grew impatient, and he replaced Leslie with Michelle Morgan, one of the great French actresses of the 20th century. In both French cinema and Hollywood weird features. Leslie sued Nebenzahl for lost wages and damages, and she sued Warner Brothers to release her from her contract. Morgan joined the cast in May with Steve Cochran, who was borrowed from Sam Goldwyn. Peter Lorre joined the cast in June. Hungarian actor, first in Europe and later in the United States. He worked first on stage, then in film in Berlin in the late 20s and early 30s. He Also, according to Variety, production was delayed by electrical workers' strike at RKO's Culver City studio. The chase was entered into the 1947 Cannes Film Festival. Excuse me. Did I say Cannes? Pardon my French. Critic Gene Ariel of the Hollywood Scene wrote that the chase has flaws, to be sure, but it has additionally a good share of suspense and excitement. He also noted the performances are indispensably good. Leon Decker of the Independent newspaper wrote, the chase is fascinating and suspenseful, but it falls back on the familiar dream solution as the easiest way out, and the audiences will be confused and disappointed. We like confusion in movies. That's why we read the Wikipedia plot summary before we watch the film. So we understand what's going on. In a retrospective review in the New York Times, Jay Hoberman wrote that the chase is nothing if not arty. Mrs. Roman is dressed and posed as if she were one of the subject of Cecil Beaton's surrealist-infected Vogue portraits. Yeah, we like the dream sequences, like the one in Inferno, where James Stewart has a blonde fetish in the cheap hotel room in San Francisco. Elaine Silver and Elizabeth Ward write in Film Noir an encyclopedic reference to the American style Phantom Lady accepted. The chase is the best cinematic equivalent of the dark, oppressive atmosphere that characterizes most of Cornwell Woolrich's best fiction. The story was adopted for television in 1954 and 1957. Steve Seckley was reported preparing a version of the novel for the United Artists, but the project did not materialize. The film is in public domain, which has led to many substandard releases. I thought the Cult Cinema Classics upload was pretty decent. In 2012, it was restored by UCLA Film and Television Archive, a version that has been released on DVD and Blu-ray by Kino Lorre in the US. It also includes an audio commentary by Canadian director Guy Maddin. We know Guy Maddin. He's the surrealist guy. We like Guy Maddin. And two 1940s radio adaptations based on the source novel. How am I doing on time here? I'm up over 18 minutes. I'm not going to go through the IMDb stuff. I'm just going to go down my list. I made a mistake in my last video. I'll name the murderer. I said Devil's Hand was on my list. Actually, I added it twice. I've already reviewed Devil's Hand, so I'm going to skip over that one today, if I can get to it. My son insisted on walking down 33rd Avenue. So I guess he's getting bored of this place after the third 2-day weekend. Plus, he likes to exercise, which is fine, but it's dang cold and foggy and wet outside. And it's summertime. Actually, I like this kind of weather because the air is nice and fresh. All right. So after The Chase's impact, 1949, another film noir that I'm looking forward to, A Stranger in Town, 1943, Half a Sinner, 1940, Captured in Chinatown, 1935, and Rimfire, 1949. So that's what I've got coming down the pike on my list. I wasn't going to go through the IMDb page for The Chase. I just went through the Wikipedia page. So hopefully that's adequate. And I added my own 2 cents worth, nothing after inflation. Highly recommended. Check it out. I love the plot twist. and the atmosphere and the cinematography and the acting and the yeah, everything was great. Highly recommended. Check it out. Laters.